Hello, everyone. This is Pittsburgh Pat, and I'm here with Ryan Doyle of Verdigris Table. How are you?
I am doing awesome. So far, so good.
Cool. We are two YouTubers who play D&D, and when we play, we recap our session, and that's what this video is about. But also, we talk about new rules in the new 2025 D&D. This is the really cool cover, and I like the other cover too. But yeah, and we go over it with you, and we talk about our experience, and hopefully that will help you in your games as well. So. Yes, last night we played Ghost of Saltmarsh. We continued our adventure. We've been doing that for months now, and we had kind of a theater in the round, theater of the mind, rather, session last night. So I thought we'd talk about that a little bit. You know, there's a lot of cool stuff in D&D. There's little miniatures. We have a friend Mike who loves, anytime you say like you said shark people, and all of a sudden there were four shark people, like he brought out of his like big toolbox case that he carries with him. But and a lot of times we have a vinyl battle map where we draw like with wet erase markers, like hallways and doorways and coral reefs and anywhere that we islands, anything we happen to be fighting on, ships. But we didn't have a combat heavy session, and we didn't do that. And I think it's important to remember that those things are all cool, but you don't even need any of them.
Hmm.
You don't need anything to play D&D, really, except your imagination. In fact, I'm pretty sure everybody has one of these. And if you just like type in like roll a D20, this comes up.
Yeah.
So like you don't even have to have like physical dice. Although I mean, every D&D player I know is a dice goblin. So like
I held out for a long time, but it happened to me. Now I have too many. Way too many.
exactly. In fact, I teach after school, and I was teaching them yesterday, and they lost one of my D20s, and oh well, you know.
Guess I need to get new ones.
Oh no, dear, I need to buy some more. Yeah, so but it was a fun session, and we were on a couple things. We did like a shopping trip. Always remember your players players love to have new gear generally. So that's always a good session to have. So and that's one of the things we did. You set up a nice mechanic where there's a magic item dealer, and we can place orders, and then once a week we can place them in advance, and then the orders get filled once a week.
Yes. Yes. It is playing with fire to create a magic item distribution mechanism. It is a very good gold sink. We've been integrating bastions, which is new to 2024 and is theoretically there for that. It's a classic thing where player characters end up with like way more gold than they know what to do with by level four,
Right.
five, and we've kind of hit that point. But yeah, having like the economic pressure release valve of a magic item vendor is players love it. Players love it. Dungeon masters have to adjust a little bit on their end for like the Hill of Giant Strength came out last
Yeah,
night.
the belt of hill giant strength.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Belt of Hill Giant Strength came out last night, and all of a sudden, the Paladin's Strength is 21, and it's a brilliant move from the Paladin standpoint because he needs to buff Charisma, he needs Constitution, so by the time he's looking at ability scores and Strength, it's not his highest, but that's what he uses to attack. So all of a sudden now he's a plus five.
Yeah, we were talking about paladins
Big
in
jump.
particular. Like that's one of those classes where there's like three, maybe four you know, characteristics, primary abilities that you really want to have. They really should be good. And that's a hard when you get the standard array to decide where to place those things.
Yeah, even point buy. I mean, I find Standard Array is like faster decision making, but like there's a few classes. A lot of the half casters I find are like that, where you want so many things at once. I mean, you're running an Arcane Trickster Rogue. That's a quarter caster maybe, but you have that
Sure.
same issue where all of a sudden like, oh, intelligence matters now.
Yeah.
Do I
Yeah.
care about my spell save DC, or do I forget about it entirely and focus on my dex because that's the one thing that's important to me? Man, I do like Constitution. Having hit points is nice. Like there's a
Yeah. Yeah, the min-maxing of the character that I initially built, I went for the three primaries were dexterity, dexterity, charisma,
Hmm.
and then I went constitution. But now I flipped it because we've been doing that since we've been playing with the rules. You as the DM have allowed us to change our characters around a little bit with permission. And so now I got I got tired of just doing the same thing in combat and I wanted to have some versatility. So I wanted to have some spells because other people were casting spells and I got jealous. So I switched it from charisma to intelligence being one of the primary ones. So now when I think about charisma, things that I like to do with my rogues, I usually like to play a swashbuckling kind of rogue. That's not on the table as much anymore because those bonuses are gone. But for the deception and the intimidation and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's okay. I think one of the things I'm starting to play with is not trying to be all things to everybody. Not playing a bard and having like every skill be like +8 and compartmentalizing and letting other people play the game too. So like for me it helps to auto correct me, make me, you know, let the paladin be charismatic if he wants to, or let the sorcerer be charismatic, and just play the game a little differently than I sometimes do. So,
Yeah. I always encourage people to look at party composition, not because there's some secret recipe or like formula that must be followed and like every niche must be fulfilled. But because you want to find your lane. You want to
yeah.
individualize your character so they have spotlight moments and it's not everybody stepping on everybody's toes all the time. So yeah, you were in a party with two charisma-based classes. You had a sorcerer and a paladin, and the paladin like really specced out into the social side of the game.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, you did what I would do, which is like lean into something else, basically. I mean, we changed systems in the middle of a campaign, which is changing the tires while the car's driving down the highway. But yeah, you can respec. So that's the move, and that's session zero. So many thanks to so many people and controversial, and I don't think it's. I think calling it a session was a mistake in the first place. But like character creation with some sort of at least conversation, if not foreknowledge of like what other people are bringing to the table, is a big thing. If everybody shows up with a high AC character with a ton of hit points who can't really do much else, not only is it going to be like a challenge to accomplish some things, which I'm actually okay with, that gets to creative solutions. But two, everyone's going to feel a little less special if they don't have their own role to play.
Yeah, it's like I'm a fighter, so am I, but I'm better, and it's like I'm slightly better. Yeah, it's that's that, I don't know. There was one when D&D 5e first came out in 2014, I got together with some friends and we decided to try to play that. And we were investigating the classes, and for whatever reason, everybody wanted to be a rogue. So we decided that we would do that. So everybody was a rogue, but we multi-classed.
Hmm.
So we had a rogue wizard, rogue bard, rogue fighter. So and that way we were all comparing notes on the common class of rogue and as we were investigating it, which was fun. But then each person kind of got to inform other people of, the class that they were investigating, the multi-class, the other class they were investigating, and got to tell them how those mechanics work. So it worked out really well from a learning perspective. And from a lore perspective or from a backstory perspective, we did, talk about things like we were in a thieves guild basically, and in each one of us were thieves, but we had ways to do that were informed by the second class. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. An exercise like that can like highlight even more. Like I've always fantasized like a party of clerics, I think is the easiest way to do it. But a party of wizards, whatever the case may be. Like everybody's a dwarf fighter. How are we going to fulfill all the roles in this party? How are we going to make these four dwarf fighters distinct from each other? What's your specialty? Because that's what, not in real life, but that
No, but
in
like,
game, the
yeah,
characters would be motivated to do that if they
well,
are actually a team.
that's
You
the
know,
plot of The Hobbit, right?
basically, yeah, every
Bunch of
action
these
movie you
dwarves
have like,
are they're really good at fighting and but they need a burglar. So
yeah,
they,
you need a
yeah.
rogue, you need a
Hmm.
thief.
Exactly. Exactly. Speaking of thieves, just hit a couple of specific magic items that we came across that I came across that I thought were fun. Gloves of thievery.
Mm,
How about that?
pretty good.
Um, +5 to sleight of hand checks. I mean, wow. And you don't have to attune to them. And which is nice. But you also don't want to lose them either because
Someone steal your
somebody
gloves
can
of
steal
thievery.
your gloves and then they'll steal everything else that you own. But no, it's pretty funny. The thief or the rogue that I have already has +10 going into level 6 in sleight of hand. So now he has +15. It's
Yeah, that adds to
ridiculous.
your, yeah, it's just +5 flat on top of any other bonus you have. So you're a Dexy character. I guess you took expertise now in
Yeah,
sleight of hand. Yeah, so that's great. +15, that's nuts.
it's
That's nuts.
crazy. And we were talking about the paladin was talking about his pluses as well. And we were talking about tiers because there was something that came up. We were looking up in the new book about how different things happen depending on what tier you're in. So tiers are, tier 1 is level 1 through 4, level 5 through 10 is tier 2. The difference between 5 and 10, as you said, is enormous.
Yeah, I think it should be like one, two, three, like one, two feels like its own game. Like three, four feels like its own game, and like five, seven. Like the difference between a fifth level character and a ninth level character is tremendous.
Right.
Um,
A lot of things
bigger
happen
than
at 9.
a lot is coming online. Um, I would. There's part of me just wishes we would stop pretending that this is a 20 level game, because no one's like tier four unless you're starting there. It's a one shot. Whatever. I mean, okay, yes, there are people out there who have had a solid campaign going for 3 years and they reach level 20, but like the game really, you're not playing D&D anymore. You've invented a lot of stuff to duct
Yeah,
tape the
you're
system
fighting gods,
together to keep it,
legendary. Yeah.
yeah, to
Hmm.
keep it interesting after level, like even level, I don't know, 13, 14, it starts to really shimmy at that speed. So yeah, I haven't seen a lot of tier four that's interesting to me that isn't predominantly homebrew. I'll put it that way.
Yep.
So yeah, I think like the tiers of play should be maybe 3 level brackets instead of 5 level brackets.
Yep. And we knew we were going to do a lot of underwater stuff coming up because in our adventure, we're defending Salt Marsh. We're doing some reconnaissance for Salt Marsh ahead of a possible Sharkman like invasion or attack. And so we're trying to figure out where their height. Well, we found out where their hideout is, but we're trying to determine what their strength and numbers are and possibly their plans. And so in order to do that, we realized we'd probably need water breathing skills because not all of us can shapeshift. The druid can, and that's the druid actually got to kind of take over the session and have Mike is playing a female character, so it's hard to know which pronouns to use. But uh, so the druids, it was the druid's time to shine because the druid got to turn into an octopus and like investigate things. And I actually had 5 familiars, so we were able to like bend the rules a little bit with that. So 5 familiar is interesting. You have a range of 100 feet
It's in my,
with
again, I don't know if this
telepathy.
was my, like I just, this is my headcanon that I decided whatever 7, 8 years ago, or if it was the old 2014 version. But there's a range that you can talk to it, command. Like you have telepathy within 100 feet, but I
Yes.
believe I thought you could see through its eyes kind of indefinitely. Hey, go over there. Fly a mile that way, and I'm gonna watch through your eyes and then come back to me. But the language in the PHB kind of points to it's ambiguous, but it kind of points to no.
Yeah, we were reading it, and it was interesting because 100 feet is mentioned in 2 of the 3 sentences, but not the middle sentence. So I wanted to read
Right.
this for the people at home. Telepathic connection. Your While your familiar is within 100 feet of you, you can communicate with it telepathically, period. Additionally, as a bonus action, you can see through the familiar's eyes and hear what it hears until the start of your next turn, gaining the benefits of any special senses it has.
Now
Now,
that
mention about range there, but it's right after it. So,
and
and
that feels
then,
separate. That feels separate to me, but I want it to be separate. And it's like
Mhm.
poor technical writing. But then this, yeah.
And then this sentence is finally, when you cast a spell within range of touch, your familiar can deliver the touch. Your familiar must be within 100 feet of you, and it must take a reaction to deliver the touch when you cast the spell. So, yeah, I mean, there's like so many things in this book, uh, from what I've heard from other players, uh, they want clarification. So that's one of the reasons we do these videos, kind of like give our take on it, initially, and then decide like, and this is the thing too, like, you and I are of the similar mind in this, I believe, but like, these are guidelines, suggestions, and then in your
Mhm.
particular playthrough, you do what makes sense,
Yes.
right? So if it's going to
Yes.
break, if 100 feet range is going to break the plot, then, you know, unless you think I mean, you can do it a couple different ways. If you want them, if you want your party to kind of sit there and like figure out another way to do it, that's great. But like, if you want to like say, okay, this is an adequate solution, let's just keep going, and run with it, then that's fine too. Or you can even have a special circumstance, like you could say like, okay, in this particular instance, this works, you know, it just does. Who knows? It's like in the Star Wars, sequels, how the Force works over light years now instead of in the same room. Who knows why? You know, you don't necessarily have to explain it. Just get on with the story, I guess. But
And that's kind of what we kept it moving that time. I think, I don't know, revisiting it this morning, I can make a very convincing argument that it's not limited to 100 feet because the other two say it's 100 feet, but it does feel like it's bracketed by within 100 feet, within 100 feet, and they just didn't say it a third time because it was, you know, the economy of page space and publishing limitations. And it's implicit because it says it the other two places. I am all for deciding what works at your table. Huge advocate for that. But I'm also a huge advocate for understanding the intention of the system
mm,
first. You got to learn the rules before you start breaking the rules or modifying the rules.
yep.
And it makes me very frustrated that this is a technical document. This is a textbook on how to play this game, and like that ambiguity feels like an error on their part. Like the fact that we have a 10-minute conversation and don't have clarity, not about like what we should do, what would be cool, but like what the authors intended.
Right.
Feels like a breakdown, and maybe we see an addendum. And yeah, it's a big mess of a game. They're trying to thread the needle of like crunch and accessibility, and I get it, but that feels like a miss. That feels like a miss. So what I ruled it that you could still see through their eyes because that's how I'm used to playing it. I think that's kind of like, we were halfway through. You had that had been happening for a while before it even became a question. Because that was my assumption. So yeah, I just let it ride. If you're sitting at home and you're like, how do I resolve these things at my table if I don't have a ton of experience, or even if I do have a ton of experience? Like I will always I don't do it with you guys anymore because it's like kind of baseline. It's like implicit now. But with newer players and a newer table, I will say this is what's happening this time, and
Mm,
I hereby reserve the right to change my mind
hmm
between now and next session when I spend some time, whatever, thinking about it, looking on the internet about it, whatever the case may be. This can work this one time. Or if it's a rule of cool thing, you crit on a spell and you want it to do something extra that's like not in the book that potentially would break the game if that's like what you can always do. Like you are allowed to allow things to work one time. It's a world of gods and magic, and yeah, it's an exception. It's literally an exception-based rule set. So yeah, once in a while you can allow something to happen.
Yeah, I can see that's important to clarify, especially if
Yeah.
you're playing with where people are going to play at other tables. You know, I often refer to Adventure League because I do Adventure League sometimes. So, you know, that's a good reminder for me to tell people, and I often do say like, this is what's happening at my table right now.
Yeah.
This may not be the definitive rule, and it might happen somewhere else. You know, so like like we talked about this one guy who kind of spams the button on guidance, and
Mm,
so I'll say like this is what's going to happen with this now, because otherwise it's just like I have to inflate all my numbers by two. So let's just put a little, let's kibosh we'll say you can do it twice a day or something, or twice a session, so make it valuable, um just to like prevent it from breaking the game, or influencing the game.
and they've made it better. I think
Hmm.
declaring what skill it is
Hmm.
solves a lot of those issues. Um, some of those issues require like above the table talk of like, hey, if you do this every time, then I have to adjust my side of the game to keep balanced. So
Right.
don't.
Don't mess with my numbers.
Yeah.
So another thing, we had a really good discussion. See, this was neat about having a free form kind of we started out the session, and I was watching a tip of the hat video where he talks about like how do you start your sessions and when do you actually start the session. And he was talking about having like a formal ritual to like start the session, but we kind of eased into it, and I like the way we do it. So we sit there and talk about our lives and what's been going on in the past week for a half hour or so, what we've been watching on TV, what's interesting, what's in the news, whatever. And then we kind of start, but then we allow ourselves to break that occasionally and talk about rules, or we talk about the game, or we just talk about like our philosophy of the game. And so we had a really good discussion last night about alignment.
Mm.
And I know that alignment kind of got some people think that it got kind of pushed back into the background in this version of 2024 5e.
I mean, even 2014 5e, like alignment is not, it ain't what it used to be, which no judgments. I mean, I have
No,
concepts, but like, yeah, alignment used to be a much more important part of the game, and now it's not.
but some of us had watched the same video about alignment, and so we were talking about a fellow YouTuber who had a really interesting take on it, and I thought it was worth checking out. So um, what happened was at one point when we were looking up familiars, and also the when the druid shapeshifted into whatever it was going to shift into. We're looking in the back of the book where they have these creatures, so you turn to a frog or whatever. And it actually, I didn't notice this before, but it says like unaligned. Like instead of having these
Yes.
creatures
Yes.
being monsters, which are generally considered evil. So if you're fighting like a giant spider in like an older version, it may have a alignment of like neutral evil.
That raises the very, yeah, I feel like,
But now it's on the line. So that's interesting. So we started talking about perspective. Like, is a spider evil, right? I
right.
mean, it does things that you probably don't want it to do to you, to like flies and things like that. But from its perspective, it's just living its life, right? So, and and God, and then we transpose that into like the intelligent um kind of adversarial races. So like, you got a bunch of goblins and they're, you know, doing their thing. Are they evil? Well, you know, all of a sudden you introduce them to their wife and the kids,
Right.
the goblin wife and kids, and now, you know, that makes it a little harder for them to just be like damage sponges.
Yeah, alignment for good or ill solves or circumvents a problem of like, how can we embrace wanton violence and have a
Right.
good time and sleep at night
Yeah.
and think it's fun? Like, oh, because we're good and they're evil. And like, yeah, in the real world, that leads to some horrible situations historically. Um, but in a game of fantasy where there's like legitimate evil gods influencing things, and like even in some of the lore, like the goblins are victims of Maglubliet. I don't even know how to say half of these words anymore, but you know, Drist is a drow, but he's not evil because he's escaped the influence of Lolth. Like there's that ambiguity is available to you, but being able to squint and be like, okay, this Knoll is evil. It's a demon tainted monstrosity and it's coming to kill everyone in your village. Go get them
Right.
with a clean conscience. Um, and this was my position last night too. I like order chaos.
Yeah.
I like getting rid of the good and evil thing and go and order chaos and just like the civilizing forces and then the like nah anarchy forces, and then there's like good and evil within those, right? Like Feywild elves or maybe law of nature chaos, and then like whatever demons or chaos. There's order of the Lord's Alliance or whatever, the good civilizing forces who are building the bastions against the tide of chaos, but then like devils are also order. It's just a very scary evil version of order.
Hmm.
And then all these like spells and like traps that trigger by alignment and magic items that only work with one alignment.
Mm.
That just makes that's more accessible to me. It's that sidesteps some of the good versus evil problems by having those be the poles.
What came up in our particular campaign because the paladin is interested in this kind of like evil cult that we discovered on this island, and we take some of them as passengers. We agreed to like take them off the island, and especially one in particular who had been charmed and had helped us in combat. We thought maybe he would actually end up being a NPC party member, possibly. But we were deciding what do we do with them? Do we turn them in? Do we let the
Mm.
town know that we just unleashed like an evil person on their docks? Do we, is there some kind of like uh Megan's Law or something for like like registered, evil alignment characters
Hmm.
in a town of law and order that we're trying to like help save from an invasion? So why wouldn't we let them know that this is a possible, snag? And so, it's these are fun issues to have to deal with, right? So they make for interesting role play. And in fact, the Paladin had like a minutes long conversation with the one NPC saying like, "Well, now that you're here, what are you going to do next?" And he started telling about his career plans to
Hmm.
open a fish and chips shop in his old village, and that he didn't necessarily want to be evil. He just wanted to feel powerful and in control and all this sort of thing. So yeah, it turned into an interesting moment that I didn't expect coming into the session. So yeah, it was fun.
And that's the heart of role play, and that like a good NPC has motivations. And that's not in the book. I don't have. I mean, it's in some books, right?
Yeah,
Like
not this book, but
not
in
the not
ancillary texts.
yeah,
Yeah.
not old school D&D adventures. So like yeah, why is this? It's one thing for the head priest of the cult, right? Like his ideology is like a little easier to suss out. This like grunt who is just like visiting this monastery who's clearly like he's an acolyte. He's got like a couple spells. That's pretty cool for him, but compared to like everybody else, like he's not the guy raising the dead. He's the
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
robbing graves to feed the necromancer or like whatever. He's what is that guy's worldview ideology? So maybe it's a modern take, but like it was out of options. He was a poor kid, grew up in the sties, needed something, right?
Yeah.
Like and his take, I mean, I let some dice rolls on my side and the player side determine like how that conversation went. Um, but he was basically like, I think I might go be an adventurer because what you guys do seem pretty good and lucrative and empowering. But also maybe I'll just go open a restaurant
Yeah.
in my hometown. Um,
I love that you had that one line where after he gets done talking to him, he says to the paladin, uh, if you when I open my fish and chips place, I'll give you a large for the price of a small.
yeah,
That was a
because he's
wonderful
still,
moment.
yeah, because like evil for me in like I mean that this guy was literally a human, but like in a humanoid, evil in like Shades of Grey means like out for number one,
Yeah.
above all else,
Right.
right? And that is recognizable to player characters for the most part. Right? There's been a few times. I mean, it happened last night. It was like, are we just gonna go be we could just go be pirates and like we
Hmm.
won't have to solve any of these moral ambiguous questions anymore. And like we could make bank and we could like get gold faster to get upgrades to our ship. Like I want a figurehead of like a dragon. And it's like, how much does that cost? Like, I forget what it is, but it's like 15,000 gold pieces, I think, to get like m a magic mechanical set of oars
Yeah.
or whatever the
Yeah.
case is.
Magical propulsion system.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's always right there. I mean, what and like I think that's kind of what convinced the paladin, if not the player themselves. He was like, "Look, I've never killed anybody. Like I'm not like super evil." And the paladin's like, "Well, I guess I can't say that." So, all right,
Yeah, that's
I guess
right.
you're free to go.
Hit him where it hurts. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, that's the other thing. What you were talking about the upgrades to the ship, and you got like excited about that because I guess you had been prepared for people to ask about that sort of thing, because we were talking about putting iron cladding onto the hull and some other things. We had taken some bastions out of the dungeon that we had looted, and we're going to put those on the ship. And then yeah, but giving players like incentives to go forward and make more money.
Hmm.
That's always something. So you always want to like, as a DM, it's good to have things that are out of the player's reach so that they have like something to quest for, you know. Otherwise, you're just sitting on a big pile of gold and it doesn't do you any good. Like you said, bastions are a relief for that now. But even those we were like trying to figure out like the mechanics because that's all brand new. Uh, and
And
we're trying to figure out what what to do with those. So
it's early, and
yeah,
as like a talking head on the internet, like, I assume some sort of authority, even though it's all a Wizard of Oz veneer. But the I really like to have some hands-on experience repeated with different groups of people before I really come down on a high level concept. But so far, I am my expectations are not met
yeah,
with the Bastion system and
yeah.
the crafting system. They really hyped up those aspects as being new and interesting, and I'm like, cool, finally, like a downtime set of like mini games almost that like players can really sink their teeth into between
Mm,
sessions,
mhm.
and we haven't had a lot of engagement. We've had high level like discussions about like what's good and like thinking through our options and stuff, but no one's really like, and maybe it's just because of our current player base. Again, this is a very small sample size of 5 people, but like I don't get the sense that any of you guys are like super into graphing out your little, my first dungeon Sims game on graph paper right now of like
Right.
my
Like
bedroom
here's
is
where
small
every
and my
single
kitchen is big.
chair is. Here's where I keep the test tubes for the laboratory. Right. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And
No,
I just wish they made it more. I wish there was more to it. I wish there was more to it.
no, that's a big part of the game for especially for the age groups that I teach the kids.
And maybe
The
they made more
young
of the
kids,
demo.
man,
Yeah,
the grade schoolers, they love that. That's like one of the
yeah.
things they absolutely love to do is draw the maps and then draw them for their friends and then draw a little bit of the hallway and describe every little detail. And they get really into the physicality of it, like, can you draw me, I can't draw this. Can you draw this for me? And that's where like miniatures and that kind of stuff come into play. They really get into like, what is this mini carrying? Well, that's not me because I'm not carrying a battle axe. I'm carrying a sword. It's like, well, yeah, this just represents where you are on the map. And it's to distinguish you from, Danny as opposed to Charles, like, so um, don't get too caught up on that. But they do, they get into every little detail
Yeah.
because that's just the way their minds work. And so yeah, there's going to be a class of people for whom that scratches an itch, like drawing on graph paper every turn and twist and secret staircase and hidden entrance you know and there's nothing wrong with that. That's
No, I
totally
mean, and
cool.
I think I get my as the dungeon master gets their fill of that, gets their fix on that pretty easily. So it seems like such a low stakes version. And at our table, and I think in a lot of games, you guys aren't starting from zero. You have taken over. Like, why would you build yourself a little two-room cabin when you just went to all the time and expense and trouble and heartache to clear out this haunted mansion? Like,
Right.
I'm gonna move into that place. We'll just renovate that place. It's got
Yeah,
good bones.
exactly. Exactly. So that's what we do. So we took the first session of Saltmarsh that we did was we cleared out a haunted house. Well, over a few sessions actually. And so we're going to take those floor plans. We're going to make that our bastion. Everybody's going to get 2 rooms to start with, or two rooms and like two facilities. So basically, I picked like a workshop and a garden, and so that's cool too, right? So it's away from the city. It's out of town. It's not subject to property taxes. You've already established.
Yeah, the schools aren't great, but the taxes are low.
And well, you never know. Maybe we'll build a road and then the suburbs will, the city will come to the suburbs. But yeah, it's it's fun. It's fun meta gaming that. Um, but yeah, I think we're not gonna get, I don't know that we're gonna get. So if we get more stuff about Bastions from Wizards of the Coast, it's gonna have to be in an addendum somehow,
Yes.
like an unearthed arcana, because it doesn't seem like the type of thing that would be in the monster manual that's coming out, nor the dragon thing that's going to come after that. So those are the next couple books that are coming out. So it's going to be a while. So maybe they are letting us play test it for them. Maybe that's what we're doing here. I don't know. But
There
yeah,
was a UA aspect to all of this, but and I don't know, maybe it's just my imagination's always going to deliver something cooler than the actual physical thing. That's
sure.
why you're talking about like this mini doesn't match. It's like here's a poker chip, kid. Like it's anything you want.
Yep.
Like that appeals to me. Um,
Yeah,
the
I know a guy that just uses like little squares. He cuts out paper squares, just puts them down because that way it's even less. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to go on a little bit about the from the investigation. So we're investigating this enemy camp that's
mm,
underwater, and I'm sorry, the wild shape from the druid was originally an octopus, and then for whatever reason, I had an idea of like, well, there were sharks. There were actual sharks. So there were
mhm.
like shark people, then there were sharks, and I was thinking, well, what's a good thing to do with a shark? And so sharks always have these little like sucker fish, these little remora that are attached to them. So so I just said that out loud. And so Mike was like, yeah, I want to turn into one of those and attach myself to one of them. Then you can get deeper into the dungeon as opposed to this random like octopus that who knows might get eaten or something like that. So predated on or set off an alarm. As it turned out, you had this interesting idea for these sharks that have like these kind of
Anglerfish.
proboscis or something with like, yeah, an
That I
anglerfish
don't get
thing.
credit. I wish I did. I mean,
Yeah.
I've made up anglerfish things in the past, but
Yeah, it
like
had
that's in the book. Credit
so it
where
had a
credit's
light.
due.
Yeah, I think I've seen pictures of that represented, and it's a light, and so these are kind of like sentries, or guards, and that's what I imagined. And so, you know, and actually the octopus, I guess, kind of it acts almost as a lure as well. So
Mm,
yeah, so there's an interesting thing. If you cast Find Familiar and you're like you cast a dog, you cast you have a familiar who's like a dog, right? And it runs into a supermarket full of, or a meat market. Is that dog gonna stay on track, right? Is it a guide dog? Does it have training, or is it gonna like fall to its baser instincts and just
hmm.
start eating like everything it can find? So same thing with the octopus. Is it gonna be attracted to this lure and go to its death? These are interesting, kind of like dilemmas that you could present your characters with, you know? So,
Yeah, and he did get it's a very good stealth and then a very good perception. I think it was a crit on perception.
mm,
So he did, I said it took him time. That was a trade-off, but he got a pretty good assessment of what's going on in this room, which is really like a stadium full of these like training exercises. So he got the full roster. And I don't know if it was him who said it, but someone was like, does that do anything? Like, do I feel any kind of way about it? I was like, no, you're not close enough. Like, I
yeah,
will I will metagame like that where it's just like, all right, it's pretty clear we're playing D&D. This anglerfish thing is going to do something. It's like, no,
yeah,
you're not close enough. I'm
yeah.
not going to tell you more than that. I'm not going to tell you what it does, but
Didn't
like
flip the
we both know
trigger.
it does something, and I'm not going to deny it. I'm going to up the anticipation and fear there.
And the neat part about that physical form that we did, so obviously there's no um well, maybe not obvious, but there's no stat block for remora, for
Ah,
mora. And so you used a quipper, which I thought was great. Small fish type thing, and use that for its stat block because we wanted to roll something. And we were talking about what skill should, for infiltration should you roll, right? So normally it would be something like deception or stealth or that sort of thing. Then we talked about creative ways to use other skill checks. And I thought about
mm-hmm.
nature too, because then the character, the druid would have to it would be a test on how to approximate the form, of the fish and make it look convincing. It's almost like a disguise, right? So it'd be like, if a rogue were going to use a disguise kit, or something like that.
And like I was trying to think, like on the drive home, I was like, how do I have I re that's not the first time
Mm.
a wild shaped druid or a familiar or somebody like infiltrated a space that I've adjudicated. So I was like, how have I done that in the past? And I think it's usually the enemy's making like an insight check or perception check or something, but like he was swimming into a room of I forget off the top. There was like 70 sets of eyes in there.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I was like, okay, you're making the roll this time. Stealth, it's also usually it's often stealth, but like walking in like you own the place, like you belong there. It's deception for a human, but like what does deception look like on a fish? So I think nature was a very good one. We settled on acrobatics
Yeah,
because you
that you came up
sold
with
me on
acrobatics. I
like
like that. What was your
the
logic there?
approach of it all, which
Mm.
was that was a good resolution. So like yeah, again, Dungeon Masters, feel free to like it took me a long time as a human with nerdy proclivities to be willing to be like, I don't know, what do you guys think?
So the logic behind the acrobatics was, what was it? I overspoke you. I'm sorry.
Uh, the way he, so he's on one side of like a gate, like a portcullis, basically. The way he timed it and like swam through and
Oh,
matched the motion of the shark to attach to it as it was going by to attract as
okay.
little attention as possible. Um,
Got
And
it.
you again, we could have called that stealth, but like swim ability, it felt acrobatic to me to like, oop,
Right.
like, you don't have
Yeah,
hands,
it's
but to like
like,
suck yourself onto a shark that was swimming by at the precise moment. Yeah.
yeah, I get it. I feel like I've seen a scene or something where somebody's trying to infiltrate an enemy camp, and so they join the ranks at the end of the line and they get it through the gate, that kind of thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
or in the middle of the ranks. Yeah, that's interesting. I thought, okay, now I understand that check. So yeah, so there you go. We have four different possibilities there with one situation. So yeah, use the rules as needed. That was
And
pretty cool.
sometimes, especially if I want to keep things moving, I won't put it to the table. I won't have a conversation. I'll make a call quick if there's like if the pressure's on, right? Like I want dramatic pacing to increase. Sometimes I don't want us to pull up and metagame or talk about the system. I'll make a call, like, and fingers crossed that the dice are decisive, right?
Mm,
Because in a lot of times you roll a 17. I don't care if it's like a +3 or a +5. All right, 17 is good enough. You did it. I don't have to think. I don't have to get that
yeah.
granular. It's
If you
when you
roll a
start getting like
10,
exactly those like
like
12s, 13s. It's like, ooh, I wish I. Okay, hold on.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
partial successes as
yes.
opposed to like,
Roll good, roll really good or really bad, so it doesn't matter.
yeah.
Please.
Sometimes it should be just a coin flip, you know?
Basically.
Yeah. Uh, Patrick the Paladin came up with a really interesting observation where he said, he wa- he said we were talking about different types of familiars and wild shapes, and he was talking about owls, and he said he heard somebody say an owl is uh, a bird with running cat software.
Yeah,
Owl is a bird running cat software. I thought that was really funny.
yeah.
Um, at one point, Mike's character as an octopus, the druid, wanted to like kind of like look around a corner or lean against a wall or something like that. And he used the word, he wanted to octopusily stealth. That's a new, I've never heard that word before. I absolutely love that one. So that was a good one. And then there was something else. Oh, right. So we were talking about what are we going to do on the boat on the ride down? It's a 2-day trip. And I said, we got cards, we got this, we got that. So, we hired an entertainer.
Mm,
That was Bertram's idea, to hire an entertainer for the crew to keep them occupied and happy and keep morale up. And we said, well, they could always play Dungeons and Dragons, while they're on the
hmm
ship. So then you said, yeah, or Houses and Humans.
hmm
That was the first time I'd heard that. I like that. That's pretty cool.
That's I don't know where I got that from, but I have an image like a meme in my head of like dragons playing houses and humans.
Dragons playing Houses and Humans.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, well, that's all I got. But yeah, that was a fun session, and I learned a lot. And we learned a lot without a battle map, and we just used our imaginations. It was such a session that was one person could say, I mean, Mike actually said, sorry for dominating the session, but like I felt involved the entire time, because he was just, you were describing what was going on there. So it was very visually stimulating. We didn't have any combat.
No.
I don't think. Yep. So like, that's one of the complaints about D&D, especially 5e. I think a lot of people complain, or I've heard people say, it's a really good combat system, but we proved that like you can play D&D without combat last night. So that's totally possible. So,
Yeah, that was all. It was all social and exploration.
and it was fun. So, thanks for the session, and
Yeah.
thanks everybody out there for watching and do the whole like subscribe thing. You know that. Check out Ryan's channel too, and we'll see you next week.